here we go with Chapter 2, The Mysteries of the Old House. Fortunately for the interesting young stranger, the individuals who had just entered the house did not attempt the door of the room in which he had taken refuge. Dude, he got lucky. They proceeded straight, and with a steadiness which seemed to indicate that they knew the locality well, to the front chamber upon the same floor. In a few moments there was a sharp, grating noise along the wall, and then a light suddenly shone into the room where the young stranger was concealed. He cast a terrified glance around and beheld a small square window in the wall which separated the two apartments. There's a window in the wall between the rooms. It was about 5 feet from the floor, a height which permitted the youth to avail himself of it in order to reconnoiter the proceedings in the next room. By means of a candle which had been lighted by the aid of a lucifer match and which stood upon a dirty deal table, the young stranger beheld two men whose outward appearance did not serve to banish his alarm. Again, should never have gone into the house. They were dressed like operatives of the most humble class. One wore a gabardine and coarse leather gaiters, with laced-up boots, and the other had on a fustian shooting jacket with long corduroy trousers. They were both dirty and unshaven. The one with the shooting jacket had a profusion of hair about his face, but which was evidently not well acquainted with a comb. I'm going to use that line. But which was evidently not well acquainted with a comb. The other wore no whiskers, but his beard was of 3 or 4 days' growth. Both were powerful, thick-set, and muscular men, and the expression of their countenances was dogged, determined, and ferocious. The room to which they had betaken themselves was cold, gloomy, and dilapidated. It was furnished with the deal table, before mentioned, and 3 old crazy chairs, upon 2 of which the men now seated themselves. But there are 3, does that mean someone else is coming? But they were so placed that they commanded, their door being open, a full view of the landing place, and thus the youthful stranger deemed it impolitic to attempt to take his departure for the moment. Yeah, you think. "Now, Bill, out with the bingo," said the man in the gabardine to his companion. "Oh, you're always for the lush, you are, Dick," answered the latter in a surly tone, producing at the same time a bottle of liquor from the capacious pocket of his fustian coat. "But I wonder how the devil it is that Cranky Jem ain't come yet." Yes, there's a third person. "Who the deuce could have left that infernal door open? Jem or some of the other blades must have been here and left it so. It don't matter. It lulls suspicion." "Well, let's make the reglars all square," resumed the man called Bill, after a moment's pause. "We'll then booze a bit and talk over this here new job of ourn." "Look alive, then," said Dick, and he forthwith took from beneath his gabardine several small parcels done up in brown paper. The other man likewise divested the pockets of his fustian coat of divers packages, and all these were piled upon the table. A strange and mysterious proceeding then took place. The person in the fustian coat approached the chimney and applied a small turn screw, which he took from his pocket, to a screw in the iron framework of the rusty grate. In a few moments he was enabled to remove the entire grate with his hands. A square aperture of considerable dimensions was then revealed. Into this place the 2 men thrust the parcels which they had taken from their pockets. The grate was replaced, the screws were fastened once more, and the work of concealment was complete. The one in the gabardine then advanced towards that portion of the wall which was between the 2 windows, and the youth in the adjoining room now observed for the first time that the shutters of those windows were closed, and that coarse brown paper had been pasted all over the chinks and joints. Dick applied his hand in a peculiar manner to the part of the wall just alluded to, and a sliding panel immediately revealed a capacious cupboard. Of course he wandered into a house with sliding panels and hidden fireplaces. Thence the 2 men took food of by no means a coarse description, glasses, pipes, and tobacco, and, having closed the recesses once more, seated themselves at the table to partake of the good cheer thus mysteriously supplied. The alarm of the poor youth in the next chamber, as he contemplated these extraordinary proceedings, may be better conceived than depicted. His common sense told him that he was in the den of lawless thieves, perhaps murderers, in a house abounding with the secret means of concealing every kind of infamy. His eyes wandered away from the little window that had enabled him to observe the above-described proceedings, and glanced fearfully around the room in which he was concealed. He almost expected to see the very floor open beneath his feet. He looked down mechanically as this idea flitted through his imagination, and to his horror and dismay, he beheld a trap door in the floor. There was no mistaking it. There it was, about 3 feet long and 2 broad, and a little sunken beneath the level of its framework. Near the edge of the trapdoor lay an object which also attracted the youth's attention and added to his fears. It was a knife with a long blade pointed like a dagger. About 3 inches of this blade was covered with a peculiar rust. The youth shuddered. Could it be human blood that had stained the instrument of death? What's he doing in this house? Every circumstance, however trivial, aided in such a place as that to arouse or confirm the worst fears, the most horrible suspicions. The voices of the 2 men in the next room fell upon the youth's ear, and perceiving that escape was still impractical, he determined to gratify that curiosity which was commingled with his fears. "Well, now, about this other job, Dick," said Bill. "It's Jem has started it," was the reply, "but he told me all about it, and so we may as well talk it over." That's convenient, right? "It's up Islington way, up there between Kentish Town and Lower Holloway." "Whose crib is it?" "A swell of the name of Markham. He's an old fellow and has 2 sons. One, the eldest, is with his regiment. The other, the youngest, is only about 15 or so, a mere kid." "Well, there's no danger to be expected from him. What about the flunkies?" "Only 2 manservants and 3 women. One of the manservants is the old butler, too fat to do any good, and the other is a young tiger." "And that's all?" "That's all. Now you and I and Jem is quite enough to crack that there crib. When is it to be done?" "Let's say tomorrow night. There's no moon now to speak on, and business in the other quarters is slack." "So be it. Here goes, then, to the success of our now job at old Markham's." And as the burglar uttered these words, he tossed off a bumper of brandy. This example was followed by his worthy companion, and their conversation then turned upon other topics. "I say, Bill, this house has seen some jolly games, hasn't it?" I love when characters have really convenient conversations. We're about to find out more about this house. "I should think it had, too. It was Jonathan Wild's favorite crib, and he was no fool at keeping things dark." "No, surely. I dare say the well staircase in the next room there, that's covered over with the trap door, has had many a dead body flung down it into the Fleet." "No, he's in the murder room." "Oh, and without telling no tales, too, but the trap door has been nailed over for some years now." The unfortunate youth in the adjacent chamber was riveted in silent horror to the spot as these fearful details fell upon his ears. "Why was the trapdoor nailed down?" "'Cause there's no use for that now, since the house is uninhabited and no more travelers comes to lodge here. Besides, if we wanted to make use of such a convenience, there's another—" A loud clap of thunder prevented the remainder of this sentence from reaching the youth's ears. "No, there's some other, murder place in there, too." "I've heard it said that the city is going to make great alterations in this quarter," observed Dick after a pause. "If so, be they come near us, we must shift our quarters." "Well, and don't we know other cribs as good as this? And just under the very nose of the authorities, too. The nearer you get to them, the safer you finds yourself. Who'd think now that here, and in Peter Street, and on Saffron Hill, too, there was such cribs as this? How such coves as you and me does laugh when them chaps in the Common Council and the House of Commons gets on their legs and praises the blue bottles up to the skies as the most acute police in the world, while they wotes away the people's money to maintain 'em. Oh, as for alterations, I don't suppose there'll be any for the next 20 years to come. They always talks of improvements long before they begin them. But when they do commence, they won't spare this lovely old crib. It'd go to my heart to see them pull it about. I'd much sooner take and shove a dozen stiffins myself down the trap than see a single rafter of the place ill-treated. That I would." These are such lovely people. If so be as the masons does come to pull this old carcass about, there'll be some fine things made known to the world. Them cellars downstairs in which a man might hide for 50 years and never be smelt out by the police will turn up a bone or 2. I rather suspect, and not of a sheep, nor a pig, nor a bull, neither. Why, half the silly folks in this neighborhood are afeared to come here, even in the daytime, because they say it's haunted. So even the people who live there are afraid of this house, and our dude just wandered into it. Observed Bill after a brief pause. But for my part, I shouldn't be frightened to come here at all hours of the night and sit here alone too, even if ever feller that was scragged at Tyburn or Newgate, and every one what has been tumbled down these holes into the Fleet was to start up, and the man stopped short, turned ghastly pale, and fell back stupefied and speechless in his chair. His pipe dropped from between his fingers and broke to pieces upon the floor. "What the devil's the matter now?" demanded his companion, casting an anxious glance around. Man, something scared them. That's not good. There, don't you see?" gasped the terrified ruffian, pointing towards the little window looking into the next room. "It's only some gammon of Cranky Jim," said Dick, who was more courageous in such matters than his companion. "I'll deuced soon put that to rights." Seizing the candle, he was hurrying towards the door when his comrade rushed after him, crying, "No, I won't be left in the dark. I can't bear it. If you go, I'll go with you." The two villains accordingly proceeded together into the next room. Ooh, that's where our guy is. And there's the third person expected to come. And this is apparently a murder house. Moral of the story, don't go into an abandoned house in the middle of a rainstorm. Okay, we'll see you for chapter 3.